Mr. Rogers for 5 minutes of questioning. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to ask, you talked about having 50 more canine teams this July than you had last July. How many do you need?
Well, again, right now we're authorized 372. We've seen about 180% increase in program over the next couple of years. So we've really been doubling down on our efforts in Lackland to make sure we have adequate training in kennel space. It's one of the things we're looking very closely at as we start getting new technology, number of officers, how we balance that against the canine. That'll be an important part of what our future budget missions look like.
Do you have enough to cover the Category X airports?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what is next as far as your expansion of that capability?
Well, I think right now, sir, one of the areas we're focusing on is this third-party canine for use in the cargo operations. And so we think that shows a lot of promise we've been working very closely with the industry with that. And again, looking at the precision of our model to how we incorporate how canines can fold into that, I think is really, really important. So from my perspective, the next evolution of how we sort of staff airports needs to include how we're utilizing canines so that we can really sit down and make sure we're projecting an adequate number of canines for future budget years.
Well, I saw in FY19 budget you're saying that it supports 1,047 canine teams, but that includes state and locals, which make up 2/3 of that. Tell me how you use the state and local teams.
Well, they're critically important to us. I mean, as you pointed out correctly, I mean, fully 2/3 of those teams are from our state and local partners.
Well, are they explosive detection canines?
Yes, sir.
Are they trained through the Lackland program or a similar program?
Those are all TSA dogs, sir. So yes, they really provide a lot of this, public area, patrolling unattended bags in airports. We work very closely. Issues in cargo warehouses. We really rely heavily on our state and local partners with the use of the canines to mitigate some of the public areas of the airports.
Have y'all made a determination as to when you will achieve the threshold of canine teams that you feel are adequate to meet the national needs?
I think
what is that number?
I still think that's something we're looking at, sir. Again, that's really the next evolution of where I think we take our staffing and scheduling models is that, we're still fairly new to the passenger screening business. As you pointed out, about 1/3 of the teams are in use in passenger screening. So as we mature our model, we really have to understand with new technology how many dogs we think we really, really need to manage the airports.
Describe for me exactly what canine expedited screening is. Is that managed inclusion?
No, sir.
How does it differ?
Again, as described earlier, the managed inclusion 2 that was in use, several years ago involved the use of the BDOs, and it was very correctly pointed out, a randomizer of some such. Our use of the dogs is enhanced screening. Again, we believe very well that the dogs are very effective as a deterrent as well as for sniffing for explosives. And so we are very confident that when the dogs are in use, that substantially mitigated many of the concerns that we have, and we feel that we can afford those passengers, all of whom have been screened for explosives, a more expedited process of going through the checkpoint. However, we view dogs as an additional layer of security, not a replacement for anything.
Well, I want to ask you said those passengers, you mean those passengers who are not pre-check or in another trusted traveler program?
The passengers that are screened by the canine, sir.
Are not part of the trusted traveler system.
So I guess it would be any right now we use the canines to screen any passengers going through the checkpoint. That may in fact be folks that are already involved in TSA trusted traveler programs or standard passengers who've not been enrolled. We believe, again, that we may see a dog either screening passengers who are enrolled or passengers who are not, because we view them as an additional layer of security, not a replacement.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think we were concerned about coming in today is we had the perception that y'all may have developed a new category where you were going to just use the canines as the primary layer. And it should just be one of several layers that you have employed to make sure that these folks that don't need to be putting bad things on airplanes are able to do it.
Yes, sir, and we agree.
Let me ask this, Mr. Russell. You made the point, you said canine expedited screening does meet best practices standard. Is that accurate?
The design of the study that they did to determine the effectiveness of that approach.
You felt like that was designed
right.
to be an effective way?
We had concerns initially
measure,
that it wasn't going to align with things like randomizing the airports selected and sort of the scope of the review. And TSA took action to make sure that the study they did conduct met that sort of criteria.
I see. And last question I had is, Ms. LaJoy, you said about 66% of the people that you believe should be enrolled in PreCheck are not. And did I understand that you think the reason why is because it's just inconvenient for them to find the location to sign up?
That's
not
what
the $100 fee, it's just the inconvenience?
The $85 fee, sir. We really honestly think that the biggest barrier is just the enrollment process. Finding a place to go enroll, that's what some of our market research says. We really think there's still lots of opportunities, even for those folks who fly 5 to 15 times a year, which would really be through that target passenger segmentation. We really think there's still a lot of room for us to target those people for full-time enrollment.
Yeah, I agree. When I entered Global Entry, to go and do the interview part, I had to go to the Atlanta airport, to the farthest terminal. It was very inconvenient to do that. I do think that more people would go into that, which would get them into PreCheck, if we could find a way to make those interviews more convenient, because all the questionings are done online.
Yes, sir. And in fact, one of the things, we're coming up on the 5-year period for folks who sign up for PreCheck very early on. And so we're putting forth a plan for those passengers to do so online without having to go back to an enrollment center. So we also think that's important in keeping people that are enrolled, keeping them enrolled.
Right.
And again, pointing back to the really, really critical work we're doing in CBP, because we all agree that if we can merge programs at enrollment sites and an online portal, we really think that's going to have a positive impact on the passenger and a positive impact on the overall growth of all DHS Trusted Traveler programs.
Great. Thank you. I yield back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr.